All right. Here again. All right. I went live a lot today, quite a bit, you know. But this one, it's you're gonna like this live, y'all. I got a funny feeling you're gonna like this live because this live, I just want you guys to know right now, is not a typical live, but it probably should be more. I'm interviewing Noelle Cook. Okay. You guys remember about a month ago, maybe less, I got into it with Pam Hemphill. And she still goes at me all, on Twitter. She's still saying stuff. And that's all good. I don't mind. I don't mind it. Go ahead, have fun. I haven't given her no airtime as of late, man. Don't plan on it actually. But this person I met through that confrontation that I had with Pam. Now, Noelle Cook is liberal, okay? Not just liberal, but a liberal, fair-skinned American. All right, I don't want to say white. I try to keep the color, man. I got to adopt that, not saying the color thing. You know what I mean? Black, white, doesn't matter. No, we're all Americans. I'm a dark American. She's a lighter American, but she's a liberal. So me and her had a great conversation. And it's crazy because we're both on opposite sides when it comes to politics. But the cool thing about Noelle, which makes her stand out to me, was the work she's done with J6. Okay. I'm going to let her tell her story and you just got to meet her. All right. So let me bring her on up. Noelle, welcome to the show. How you doing? Everybody, if you could, please share this thing out right now. Hit that like button because this is going to be fantastic. I feel it's going to be fantastic. So if you guys could like this video, share this video out. Noelle,
Hi. Nice
how
to
you
be
doing?
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. It's a little
No
awkward and
problem.
strange. This is the first time I've ever done something publicly with someone on the other side, if you
Yeah.
will. But you know what? I've been doing this now since spring of 21, and I've changed a lot in the process of it.
Are you still
Um,
liberal?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't change my politics. That's
Gotcha.
just it. It's not changed anything I believe or think or feel, but it's changed how I think of people.
Right.
Um, People aren't all one thing, right? There's lots of things that go into them. And when January 6th first started, well, first let me tell you how I got involved with January 6th in the first place.
Okay.
As you can see, I'm an older, fair-skinned woman.
All right.
And as such, I was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years. And my marriage ended in divorce after 25 years. And I was like, oh, what next? There's no career path for someone my age. So I went back to school and I got a degree in anthropology. And right when I was graduating and starting my master's program, COVID hit and all in-person research was screeched to a halt. I was actually in India going to go do a documentary film. I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks. I got sent home after 12 days. So fast forward through, 2020, which was pretty dark and depressing most of the way through. So 21 rolls around and I'm bored. I'm an amateur photographer and I'm looking for a new graduate thesis since my other one was obliterated. So I decided to go down to DC on January 6th. I was living in Baltimore at the time. I lived in Baltimore from 2012 to 2022.
So
And
wait, January 6th, you was in DC. You was at the
yes,
Capitol. Okay.
correct.
Okay, keep going.
But it was very cold that day, and I was dragging my feet about whether I wanted to go. But because I'm an amateur photographer, I had been to many, many protests or rallies in DC and taking photographs. And I like the imagery of protests. I like the signs and the colors and all the people. I've done the women's marches, climate marches, science marches, all those
Yeah.
marches. So I decided, okay, why not? I'll do Stop the Steal rally. I'll go take some pictures and see if I can come up with a visual anthropology project. Well, obviously I got there and it was a little different than I expected. There was no rally anymore and everyone was at the Capitol because I didn't get there until 2 o'clock.
Oh, you was real
Um,
late.
it was very late, yeah.
Yeah.
And as I walked up to the Capitol, I came up from the lower Senate Park, which is the east side of the Capitol. And there's a police officer in a single kiosk there. They put up after 9/11 to keep cars from being able to drive all the way up to the building. So you have to stop there first. And she said, be careful. They just breached the building. And I had no idea what that meant because there didn't sound to me like there was anything happening as far as sirens went. And I've been in DC enough to know that, you breathe the wrong way and they'll close streets down because
Right.
there's a threat. So I was very confused by that. But when I got around the corner and saw the building, I saw something was wrong because you're not allowed to stand on even a step on the Capitol building any time of the day. So I watched all of that, and I was on the east front, which is the opposite side of where the tunnel was.
Right.
So all I saw mostly was just people sitting on the steps. So I was taking pictures of people on the steps, their flags, their signs, but I didn't go around to the west front of the building until about 4 something. And that
So let
was,
me ask you something real
yeah,
quick, not to cut you off, but when you were on the east side, you didn't see no violence happening and people fighting the police and none of that?
not on the east side, no.
Okay.
I got there, it's when I would go back and look at my photographs and try to reconstruct the timeline after it came out. I think I arrived about 15 minutes or so after the east front was breached, which would be the side that's not the tunnel side. When I arrived, there's a grass area behind the concrete parking lot. I
Okay.
mostly was on the grass because I wasn't, again, I was trying to get my bearings. I really didn't know what I was seeing. I also was wearing a mask and I had a big ass camera. So I was
Right.
like, I didn't know how, I mean, no one bothered me as it turned out. No one said a word to me about the mask or the camera.
You know what's wild about this right now? To be
But,
honest with you, what's so crazy to me is that you being a liberal, right?
mm-hmm,
You've been in all kind of protests, like liberal protests, I
mm-hmm,
guess. And you're on here right now on my platform, and you're telling me about January 6th, which you was at,
mm-hmm.
and you're not saying any of the things thus far that the left side of media has tried to push about what happened that day. You're not, and you could, by all rights, you could come up here and lie right now and be like, oh, I just saw they were going crazy and the MAGA people with the red hats, and you could come up here and say all of that, and instead you're not.
Well,
You're just
let me
saying
just
the
be
truth.
clear. By the time I got to that east front, whatever bike racks had been in place
Was
were gone.
gone.
I
Yeah.
saw a few, there would be one or two, and I only know this because I've looked back at my photographs to see, was
Right.
I out of bounds? Did I ever go on to tear onto, I don't think I did, except for the very end when someone came out of the Capitol and yelled, they shot a girl in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I still didn't think that was real because I would have expected helicopters or something. I don't know what I expected, but it
Right.
didn't happen. And so I kind of wandered. There was, let's see if I'm on the east front. I'm trying to see what direction it would be. Maybe the north. I turned to the left. If you're looking at the east front, I went to the left because there was a pocket of law enforcement over there. I saw an FBI SWAT team. And there were a bunch of guys over there fanboying over the guns and all that.
Right.
And they were just standing there, though. They weren't doing anything. And it was when the EMTs arrived that they flanked the gurney. And they were there to escort the EMTs into the building to retrieve Ashley Babbitt's body and to remove her to the ambulance waiting for it. And then they left. So I still am not, I just knew I wanted to get out of the backside. I thought that was bad. Then I go around the front and you get no cell service there, or I did not anyway.
No one did. They had jammers on.
Yeah, well, I personally don't believe that they had jammers on because at every one of those liberal marches, it was the same thing.
No, they told us in the reports that they did.
Oh, I don't know.
Depending on your cell service, if you didn't have like some really, really, really good cell service, your signal was jammed.
Well, I know that every single time I've been in DC, when there's a large crowd congregated in a specific area of DC, everybody's trying to live stream. Everyone's trying to upload data.
Yeah.
And it does choke it off. I received a text from I left my house in Baltimore at about 1 o'clock. And I parked at Union Station and walked over. I got it. My son must have seen a news broadcast about pipe bombs being found. Right? Because at 4:30, a text finally rolled in. I must have gotten into a pocket of the area around the Capitol where I was able to receive cell signal. And I got a text from him saying, Mom, get out of there. They have bombs. And of course, I'm like, no, they don't. Right? Because I hadn't heard about that report yet.
Right.
When I got to the West Front, and that was after what I had just described, the ambulance leaving, that I walked across the street where there's like a fountain. And I looked from there and I had a 400 zoom lens for all of this. So I was using those as like binoculars to see but I still was too far away to be able to see exactly what was happening, but I knew something was wrong. And again, because of the distance I was at, I was never up close to the building. I wasn't able to see the violence taking place inside the tunnel. However, I did sit through one criminal trial and saw up close and personal the violence that was used as exhibits. So although I didn't personally witness violence, I believe there was violence.
Oh, there definitely was violence.
Okay.
It's just crazy that you're being honest. Not for you anyway. I mean, you probably are an honest person. I mean, like, you know how people on the right have a certain thought or a certain perception about people that are on the left, right? And with most of my experience when I talk to people that are, on the left, particularly women that they feel a certain way about Trump or MAGA, there is no good. It's just everything bad and horror story, and you're just here being real, which is the
Yeah.
reason I point that out is because of the story that you're gonna get into later about how everything that you've done with J6 and the people that are involved. So my bad for interrupting. Keep on
Oh,
going.
no worries. I mean, that's kind of, again, and then I went home at 5 o'clock because even in the liberal protests, if you're old like me and you don't want to get into it with anybody, you get out of there at dusk, because anybody who
I hear
wants to
you.
start trouble is going to do it after dark. So at 5 o'clock, we walked to the Union Station and went home. And then I turned on the news at home and was horrified.
Right.
And it was so surreal to have been there and not known what was happening inside, right? And I really, again, it was all very surreal. It felt like this kind of weird carnival-esque atmosphere. But I will tell you one thing, I didn't see violence, but I heard violent rhetoric. And that was what really drew my attention to my own photographs. When over the next 2 weeks, I literally sat in my living room staring at my computer and looking at my pictures, just trying to figure out what I'm seeing because so many women look just like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm trying to understand, I'm thinking about 2020 and how many things it destroyed for me and how, I could have gone the tipping point, right? Where there were days I was like, I just want to break, I just want to do something
Right.
crazy here.
No, I hear you.
But I didn't. And I started thinking, most of these women have families. And I focus on women, by the way. And so everything I say is from the lens of what it's like for particularly middle-aged women. Because that
Okay.
was so after I went home and I looked at these pictures and saw how many women looked like me, I started thinking about my new graduate program thesis, right? My new project. And it was going to be how women move into movements differently than men, for example. But so I started following everybody from a distance. I hate the word tracked because it sounds like I'm stalking, but I looked at court records of the
Yeah.
first 100 women arrested.
Okay.
And I put it on a spreadsheet and I listed everything I could think of, affiliations, education, region. And uh, after I had probably 15 categories, and I couldn't figure out what the pattern was, if there was one. And so color coded and sorted them, and then a pattern was obvious, and it was generational. The first 100 women, more than, I would say, probably 75% of them were Gen X, like me, or young boomers. And so I thought that was interesting that so many middle-aged women were doing something that potentially could put them behind bars in federal prison, and take them away from their families. And that would, what would
So
I be willing to do for that? Huh?
at the time when you seen them women, is that what you seen them doing things that was going to potentially get them sent to prison or could get them in trouble just for being
Oh,
at the
well, no,
protest?
I'm talking about when I got home and saw what had happened inside, right?
Okay.
Again, I'm just looking at pictures of people sitting on steps. I don't have
Gotcha.
pictures. I also want to go on record saying I was not, my goal was never to identify anyone. I only
Right.
looked at the actual court filings and looked at the statements of facts, the FBI affidavit, to see what the claims were.
Right.
That's it. So I kind of followed some people for the first year through social media, just kind of looked at them, looked at what they're about to see. And I have boundaries, right? I don't want to actually get to know anybody who is, so like overtly racist, for example. If they're going to drop the N-word every other word, I'm not really interested in them because I'm not willing to learn from them
Right.
because you've already told me you're
You already
racist.
seen the
And all I
ignorance
need
that
to
they hold.
know,
Right. I get that.
you know, but oddly enough, my first inclination as I started to watch at a distance and hover above, like academics do, I ended up getting to know a couple of these women. And one of the women, after 2 months of talking to her, one of her children committed suicide. And I was the first person she called after talking to me for 2 months because so many of these women literally don't have anyone left in their lives they can rely on. And maybe they never did before January 6th also, but in some cases, more alienation occurred after January 6th. And
Right.
I will admit that first year I was studying it, I wanted to demonize everybody, right? I wanted to, because if you think about it, if MAGA believes that the election was stolen in 2020, right?
Hmm.
What about Democrats? Don't you think Democrats are going to feel like MAGA's trying to steal it too, potentially? If they, when they, do you see what I'm saying? It's like when you look at both perceptions and
Yeah, I mean,
perspectives.
I guess it would depend on the lens that you look at it from. Because,
Mhm.
like, for me, with the things that I saw, right, from when I was free still in 2020 with the election, that led me to believe what I believe. Like, I was streaming live at places, and people were showing them blocking the polls. Like, you couldn't see in, the poll watchers weren't allowed to be in there. You had a pipe bust, and they said it was like a water main leak, and that came out to be false. It wasn't. It was like a backed up toilet. But they moved everybody out while the Democratic counters, the ones that was counting votes, stayed in, and it just everything seemed to fit. You know what I'm saying? And then in
Okay.
Pennsylvania, when they were doing the things they were doing in Pennsylvania, everything just seemed like, okay, they are really trying to rig this. And then when I went to bed, that night, and Trump is annihilating Biden, and then you wake up the next day and it was what he said, because Trump said this before, there was going to be a massive dump of ballots, right? Mail-in ballots. And that happens, that happens the next day. You find out, oh, he lost the election. And then, you know what? See, I wavered a little bit with it, after, up until this election now. When this election happened, we seen Joe Biden say that he won, what was it, 81 million or something like that when he beat Trump, or 80 million, something like that.
I'll be honest with you, since I've been engaged in this project, I know all the stuff, but I don't study it because I don't care about that because
Well,
I'm
yeah,
not here to convince anyone.
I
I'm
feel
here to
you.
understand people.
I get it, but again, like, when you talk about, the people believing in certain things, here we
Yes.
had this election, and you had Trump get the same amount of votes, maybe a little more than he got in 2020, and the other candidate, there's, what was it, 14 million votes
I
less
can't
than
tell
Biden. Like,
you.
how did 14 million people, after all that, they raised $1 billion? And I know it's off topic, but it kind of reinforces the belief that something fishy happened in 2020, you
Right.
know?
And so, like, for example, when I talk to, there's two women in particular, and then the two I focused on the most. And not because we align most closely in our values or belief systems, but because they're authentic.
Right,
I don't have to try to read between the lines and guess what's real and what's not. They're honest people. They're
right.
authentic people. Their truth and the honesty they believe they're telling may not always coincide with what I believe to be reality, right?
Hmm.
But I know them well enough because I've done this now for almost 4 years, um, and it changed every year. This became a different project. By the time it was 2 months in, when I talked to Tammy, who is a woman in our film and lives in Pennsylvania, the one whose child committed. When I say child, it was a 32-year-old child. The
Yeah.
child committed
Still her baby.
suicide.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, you know, it all changed in that moment because as an academic, if I want to keep academic boundaries, I can't get involved. So I said, screw it. I'm not, how do you do that, right?
Can't
This
block
woman
your
had nothing,
humanity. Yeah.
and no resources, no support. So I got in touch with some of my contacts and then a lawyer in Philadelphia, Ticket Pro Bono, who had won settlements for victims of the Boy Scouts of America and the
Wow.
Sandusky victims. I mean, they're a big deal. They only take cases they think they can win that are going to make national headlines. This woman's child was trans
Okay.
and was in a men's prison. She was a trans woman, had transitioned in 2019, was transitioning in 2019, but had only been on hormones for a few months, so still looked male.
Okay.
And was and also had a variety of other issues going on with drug addiction and so forth, as does their entire town.
Right, right.
She lives in a middle central Pennsylvania, Poston, where all the industry is gone, and it's just racked in poverty and addiction. Her entire life has been filled with addiction, incarceration, domestic violence, sexual abuse. Right?
Mm.
It's just trauma after trauma after trauma. And so by year two, I'm looking at how trauma plays a role in some of this because these are stories I hear from so many of these women I talk to.
Right.
And because I look at personality traits too, like who's going to be drawn into extremism or who's going to be drawn into conspiracies. And I personally have a ton of those characteristics, right? So
Hmm.
why don't I believe that there's a satanic cabal of pedophiles killing children and using the meat for hamburgers at McDonald's, right? Why didn't I go that route? Well, you
Yeah.
laugh, but you know what? A couple A couple of people like they believe it.
I
You
mean,
know,
again, I look, I gotta say it. I mean, you went a little extreme talking about turning babies into meatballs and stuff. I don't.
no, it's actually.
The
I mean,
thoughts,
it's
the
not as
thoughts and
extreme as
views
it
that
is.
are being spoken right now are not reflective of this channel, of YouTube, or
Nor is there,
Facebook.
yeah,
Okay, all right.
and
So
nor is there any evidence to support
this
those
is for
claims whatsoever.
entertainment and educational purposes only. Let me go ahead and clarify that.
Well, that's
No,
a
but
scene in our film,
here's the
actually.
yeah, no, but here's the thing, right? When you talk about the pedo ring,
Mhm.
this stuff is being put out there now. When especially with the whole Epstein thing, they had a literal ring.
Right,
Literally, they were flying children. The stuff with Nickelodeon,
right.
that
Well,
guy,
this is the
he
problem
was
with conspiracies, right?
yo. A
Sometimes they have some truth.
conspiracy turns to fact though, and then again, it reinforces beliefs that people had already, even if they're off on the way that they believe it or how it's going on. It's still true what they think is going on. Now, I don't know if they turning people into meatballs and stuff like that. I ain't heard that one. But the ring of them liking kids, that's fact now. So
Well,
then
right.
how does it, I mean, I don't know. It's like,
Well, take Tammy, for example, who is the darker haired woman in our film. You might have seen a clip of her probably at this point. Um, so her mother died when she was 11. Her stepfather started sexually abusing her when she was 11. And that continued throughout her life with various partners who would either beat her up or abuse her sexually. And then it happened to all of her children, right? Through foster care systems, 2 of her children were abused by the system, basically, because they got caught up in Kids for Cash, which was a huge scandal in Pennsylvania, in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, in 2003 to 2008, when juvenile court, and this is where, and these were Democrats, right? So this is where I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat.
facts.
Power often gets abused, right?
Facts. I
And
agree.
so I look at it that way. So here's these Democratic judges in Luzerne County who were had a green light, did the green light for a for-profit juvenile detention center to replace the decaying county-run detention center for juveniles. In the process of that, the juvenile court judge was given a giant kickback from the developers because these guys made like $2 million in keeping kids incarcerated. And yes, someone just commented Biden just pardoned that guy.
That's
exactly
crazy.
correct. He gave him clemency.
That's
and that is
crazy.
the economy. He was what was known as the president judge, which I guess would be like the chief justice maybe of the court of whatever it is, a juvenile court. And he and this other judge, 2 of Tammy's children, including Sabrina, the one I just talked about, who hung herself in her prison cell when she was held on a drug charge in September of 22. Now, the lawyers in that case, by the way, couldn't take the case. They worked on it for a full year. But when all was said and done, the evidence that came back from the handwritten notes that came back from the prison weren't enough to make a case, see? Because there's no system in place where you can document in real time. I mean, to me, this is where I became I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think this is a conspiracy, but there is a possibility. If you're using just form papers with lines and you fill in the blanks, you can rewrite those if you get subpoenaed from a lawyer. That's true. And so I started thinking, there are some commonalities and some things that we can, prison reform is something we could probably
100%
get together on, right?
Yeah.
Especially people who are middle class, white people who have never been in prison, who maybe spent 20, 30, 60, 90 days in prison for January 6th, and they spent it in federal prison, not county.
Right.
And that's a big difference too. And you hear a lot of people saying people aren't treated well. People complain that they're always cold, and you think, why do we do that? That seems very punitive and sadistic to me.
Yeah.
And why, if your whole goal is to rehabilitate someone or retrain someone to do some other, to take their life in a different direction, how do we think that throwing them in solitary confinement, allowing corrections officers to harass them unmercifully, how is that going to make someone a better person? It's not.
Well, I think about this too, right? Pretrial detainees are different than convicted inmates. A pretrial detainee still retains all of their rights as an American, whereas when you get convicted of a crime and you're a felon and you're in the system, that 13th Amendment comes into play and you're no longer considered a regular American. You're a slave. That's per Constitution. You know what I'm saying? You are, by the 13th Amendment, you are literally a slave. So when you have a pretrial detainee sitting inside of solitary confinement and being punished as if they're already convicted of the crime, because we're supposed to have you're presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Well, then how do you treat them as if they're already guilty the whole time that they're in pretrial detention?
I would assume, having not gone through the system myself, and from the little I know from the two women that I talked to who have, I would assume that they would be being put into solitary confinement, not for the crime itself, but for breaking or violating some rule or protocol within the prison system itself. That would
Not
be
with
my
me.
guess.
Not with me. They had us all sitting in in solitary confinement.
Was that COVID?
Even after COVID.
Okay. So
Just
I
because
don't
of,
know. I
like you
don't
said, the
have,
corrupt system. Just like you said, a corrupt system where they're in it for their own reasons, and they want to punish people because they have a certain belief outside of what their job is. They're like, oh, they look at these people and like, oh, they're Trump supporters, or oh, they're white supremacists, or whatever the case is.
sometimes
And
I
even
think that comes into play, to be honest with you.
oh, it did for us.
But no matter, I think you got to look at systems of power, and you can go back to when the country was founded and immigration started, right? And we treated Irish people and Italian people as lesser than. And then each new immigrant group that came in that got darker each time got punched down on further, right? And until we have almost our own kind of caste system in place.
100% agree.
And it's not just racial, it's class-based as well, because I do believe that there is systematic built-in racism. And if the best example I can give is intersectionality. When you talk about intersectionality, where the different lines cross, right? For example, Kimberly Crenshaw came up with the term lawyer, and this was a legal definition of. It was a case back in the early 70s when a bunch of women got fired from, I think it was General Motors, and they were claiming it was discrimination. But they weren't just claiming discrimination based on sex. They were also claiming race, but there was no way to do both the way the system worked at the time. And so the argument was the way employment worked at that time was last hired, first fired. And so because the way civil rights worked, first it's white men, and then there's black men and white women, and then black women were the last ones to kind of be ushered into mainstream employment, right? And so of course they're the last hired and the first fired. So they bring a lawsuit, and that's when they started to talk about the intersection of like race and gender, and how sometimes people have, like, I believe that. Now most people will say I'm woke because of that, or say I'm doing the libtard woke stuff or something. But I enough to see it.
I'm about to say it just depends on what you studied, because like for me, when I think about that kind of stuff, I go back further in history, right? Before civil rights. And when you look at slave owners,
yes,
what doesn't get talked about enough is how many black women were slave owners that owned black men. Sure. And they talk Africa. About
before. That's the whole.
No, forget Africa. I'm talking on into Louisiana, where you had a whole bunch of plantation owners. A lot of them were black women. And for me as a black man, right, I see the similarities of that time reflected in today, because back then the black women hated black men, right? It seemed that way. And that's how I feel like it kind of is today. You have a majority of women that I've encountered that are, I would say, toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
A toxic
mean to you?
Well, someone that you can't please. They only want to see the negative. It's always about them, like narcissistic kind of.
Self-absorbed.
Yes, self-absorbed. So when you look at, I'll use my own personal experience with these women. It's always like when I got with a white woman when I was younger, right? Certain black women, especially even in my own family, was mad. But it's like, I grew up seeing y'all and seeing how y'all are and how you talk about men, particularly black men, but you're nice to your boss. Like, you'll go to your job and you won't talk back to your boss, your boss that's a white man. You're trying to please him and everything is good because he pays your salary. But when you come home to your man, you got this disdain and you don't want to do the things that you would do for your boss. You won't even do for your man.
Like
and
what?
Just be nice, be respectful.
Oh, I get it.
Be respectful.
Totally get it.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just a massive disrespect. And then, like I say, you play that back when you start reading different historical accounts of of slavery, especially I like to point out Louisiana. People look in Louisiana and look at how slavery was in Louisiana and who the slave masters were in Louisiana. It was a lot of black women. When we talk about black people being slave owners, a majority of them were women. People don't know that. A majority of the slave owners that were black women. And they did some atrocious things. Like there was one slave owner that was a female that she would marry the slave that she had, one of the slaves if she liked him, and then when she was done with him, she would chop off his genitalia and put him back as a slave and grab the next one, and that was her thing. Like she would castrate him.
So
You know what I'm
Lorena
saying?
Bobbitt wasn't original then.
Yo, I'm trying to
You know
tell
who
you.
Lorena
So
Bobbitt is?
yeah, I know who Lorena Bobbitt is, but yeah, when you're talking about these things, like I think about all of that, and about the employment with black women, with the civil rights thing again, like I don't see it as
Well, that example was just to show you how the system works and
yeah. Okay,
how it
I
can
got you.
how it can proceed generationally, just like with redlining, right?
Yeah,
Black families who bought homes in neighborhoods and
and the realtors were
Americans
told not
typically,
to rent to them.
right. Well, Americans typically pass wealth through property, right? Through real property. And so if your family owns a home and they've decided to redline your area so that no one can their property values don't go up, that's systematic racism. That happened. That's real.
Yeah, that's a
That is
fact.
real.
It's a great book called The Color of Law that taught me all about that. That was the first book I read about redlining before I really got into it.
And that was just that was just a generation. That was my mom's generation.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not, and as you see, history is slow. Things change, move slowly. And it's one of the biggest frustrations I have. Because it's like, in my lifetime, is anything going to actually change? Because I've been hearing these same things since I was, and I'm probably old enough to be your mother. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing, and this is innately me, is curiosity of people. I'm really interested in people's stories. I really like to understand what makes people tick and just get to know different kinds of people. And so that was why anthropology and ethnography worked so well for me. And so after I decided to ditch the graduate program, someone approached me to write a book, and a couple of the women asked me to write one of them, Tammy, really wanted me to write a book. She wanted her story to be told. And Yvonne said she wanted to be in the book. And I thought I was going to add other people, but when I really looked at it, I had a problem finding authenticity because there was so much fighting going on. There was so much name calling, posturing for influence. It didn't feel authentic. It's like, I'm not going to learn anything because you've already got a predetermined script of what you're going to tell me about yourself, right? The best part of all of this is I started talking to my friend Yvonne, and I call her my friend, and I struggled with that. And not because I'm ashamed of it, but because I'm worried about my side. What's my gut? What's my side?
What are they going to think, you being cool with a J6er?
Right. They're not, but when I say my friend, I started thinking there's different kinds of friends, right? There's your best friend you tell everything to, who knows your deepest, darkest secrets. And then most of your friends are just people you present whatever that persona is, right? And they don't really know the real you. But Yvonne and Tammy let me know the real them, and I let them know the real me. I don't use my name, Noelle Cook. When I got divorced, I wanted to recreate myself. So I started using my name from my family tree, one of my great-great-great-grandmothers, who was one of the original white settlers of West Virginia, only to my horror to find out that they did some pretty horrendous stuff to indigenous people back in the 1700s. And I got my own family records to show it. So, but a lot of people know me as my other name. I use Tara as an other name often. I've been using that for years now. And I never changed it. And I like it because it's me without my kids and I'm not a mom and I'm no one's wife in that role. I'm just me. Right. And I was able to get to know these women. We never talked politics. We never mentioned Trump. They never asked me who I voted for, and I never asked them a thing about changing. Yeah. Tammy, one morning I woke up and she sent a picture of herself in a Trump shirt. She was on her way to a rally in Pennsylvania, and it was before her sentencing. And I, being the uptight mom type I am, was like, don't do anything to draw attention to yourself. You haven't been sentenced yet. Be good. And of course, the first thing I wake up to is 7 a.m. There's her shirt, and she's like, "Is this low key enough?" It's like it was like a rebellious teenager, right? But that's the kind of relationship I have with her. That's when dope. There's something truly, I feel like I'm almost like a big sister to her. Whereas with Yvonne and I so alike, sometimes it scares me. It's like, it's weird. We look alike, we sound alike. People constantly, when we talk about the film, get us confused or who said it because we sound so much alike. We're
Yeah.
both passionate and expressive.
Where can I
Um,
find that film at?
yeah, well, it's not released yet. It hasn't been gotten a distribution deal, but we did just get selected, early selection actually, for the American Documentary and Animation Festival in Palm Springs at the end of March.
Congratulations.
It's submitted to a whole bunch of festivals, but the way festival season rolls out, it's like a hierarchy of who gets to announce what films they take first. So
Right.
we're still waiting to hear from a few other big ones before we go to like B list, but whatever that
Yeah.
means exactly.
Hey,
Um,
you're doing it though. Keep at it.
but it's great because like I said, it changed every year. So by year 2, I'm wrestling with what is a friend, right? As I'm going to Yvonne's trial, when when Yvonne says it in the film that no one in her family came to a trial, and I understand that actually. I understand why that'd be hard for your kids to sit through all that, right? That could be
Yeah.
hard. So her husband, her ex-husband, we'll get into that later, was there, and it was me, and I stayed for the whole trial, and I went back for sentencing, and I wasn't planning to do a film with Yvonne. The filmmaker Liz from England was coming to DC, and we were going to go film Tammy in Pennsylvania. But Yvonne needed me to help her with, or asked me if I'd be willing to drive cross country with her from DC because she had to pick up her kid's car in Ohio and drive it back to Idaho. I'm like, I love adventure. Why not? And so we did. But we said we have to go film Tammy, and she said she would be part of the film. So that's kind of how it happened. And I would say I don't think I will never not be in touch with them now, right?
That's dope.
Because we're different kinds of friends. And going to Yvonne lives in Boise, Idaho. She's my age. We're a month apart. And Yvonne has some beliefs that are definitely contradictory. She's a polarizing figure because she rejects organized religion. To some people, she's a polarizing figure to some people because she rejects organized religion. She definitely believes more in a spirituality, right, than she does in a religion. She didn't like it when the churches closed during COVID because she did not believe that God would close his church to his followers. So she's kind of turned against organized religion, or decided it didn't work in her belief system anymore. And she turned online and found a lot of new age spirituality that she got involved with. And so that caused some conflict because her former community was almost all evangelical. And some of her family members are. And so I watched in year 2 as she's becoming more isolated, right? And going through a trial and going through sentencing and having that isolation where people that have been close to you have kind of turned their backs on you, which I get because I don't have the emotional baggage that a family member has, right?
Right.
I mean, I can care about her, but I don't have this, it's not like I'm her daughter or something. And so I did those things, and she kept talking about all the stuff I had done for her. And I'm thinking to myself, what is a friend? A friend is someone who's there when you need them, I guess, to support them and how they need to be supported. And Yvonne doesn't need the same kind of support as Tammy needs from me. She wants more. She knows I'm practical.
How many of these women, right, have you helped that were affected by J6?
I talked to many of them, and when I say helped, I would say Tammy and Yvonne are the only 2 I actually would call my friends, the ones I actually took the time to know. And this doesn't happen overnight. We're talking years here now, right? Right. 2-3 years where I know them like I know any good friend because we've shared all our stories.
Right.
But yeah, we don't talk politics, so it's good.
So it was them 2 was the only ones that you actually like helped out with J6, or? Well,
I helped. It depends on how you say helped. I talked to a lot of people in various
shared their stories. Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
So yeah, you heard their stories.
Yes.
Yeah. So how many women would you say?
Probably about 6 that I actually spent any time talking to.
So it started off as you, because you got a background in anthropology, so you like to understand people, cultures, the way things work.
Yeah, because at my age, going back to school, there's no career path, so I might as well do something I love.
Right, I heard that. So in that, you met 2 of them that you actually became like friends with, you connected with. So how did that affect everything moving forward? Because I'm gonna jump into the Pam thing in a little bit,
Mhm.
but how did that affect your your standing, I guess, with your own community of people that are liberals that maybe, seen you doing this? What was their reaction to it?
Well, I didn't talk a lot about it because I wasn't creating content, right? They weren't content to me. So I didn't post about them. Like I didn't jump on. There were a couple of times throughout the last couple of years I used examples um, to illustrate some points, but never used names because that just isn't my thing. In fact,
Right.
I went in downtown Los Angeles. There was a kind of a freedom corner, like West Coast Freedom Corner thing. I
Yeah.
went to. Um, my time is so off because I've been doing this book. So it could have been 6 months ago. It could have been 9 months ago. But at some
Right.
point, I went there and I talked to the women who are organizing it, and they were very kind to me and very friendly to me. I asked if I could talk to them, ask them questions, and I assured them it was for my own knowledge and I wasn't doing anything with it. And they let me, including Danny Rodriguez's mom, who told me her whole story about what it was like having the FBI come into her house in the middle of the night. And I'm the kind of person that learns through experiencing, right? So talking to people, watching their body language and seeing how they, how I feel when they're
Right.
talking helps me understand better. And I promised these people I wouldn't do anything with it. There were other people from Los Angeles there that night that were creating content. And immediately, a couple of these women blocked me and were very concerned that I had lied to them, that I was there to exploit them. But I wasn't, and I didn't. And I still have never shared any of those videos with anyone. They were
Right.
literally
Right.
just for my own learning purposes to understand. Because if we can't understand each other and understand, like Tammy will believe in this cabal stuff, because there have been pedophiles around every corner in her life. So, of course, she can imagine that there's this whole apparatus that supports it. When the reality is, I think, there are bad actors everywhere who are going to exploit their power and their privilege and their access. And that,
I'll tell you right now, like not the cabal like you're thinking, but it's been for me, like with
mhm,
her belief in it is because she's seen exactly what me and other people have seen, that
right.
it is a cabal. Like if by definition, that is a cabal. They have a group of people. They're all wealthy. They're all, people we're probably never gonna meet them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That got together and kept each other's little dirty secret about
Well,
what they
yes,
do with
the good
minors.
old boy club.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So
Everybody keeps, but is it organized by government? Is it only elite Hollywood? I don't
no, I
believe
don't
that's
think it's
true.
only that. I think for me personally, right, and
Mhm.
many other people like her, what you're talking about, when you have any person of power that has any
Yeah.
kind, you have a person that controls your media that is
hmm
a part of this club, and then
hmm
they also film children. That's their
Your
job.
preacher, your pastor, also.
You're a pastor. You're a priest. You're
hmm
a
Your
politician.
politician, you vote your
You're
congressman.
exactly. So by definition, that is exactly what a cabal is.
I
They got
suppose
their
you could
own.
look at it that way if you wanted to, right? So we
Yeah.
have a problem with power being concentrated where it shouldn't be, is what
Yes.
I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
One hundred
Um,
percent.
and see, and that's what I'm saying. If we can, at some point, there's got to, like I said, I have boundaries. I'm not going to talk to somebody who's like just grossly anti-Semitic and racist. And I think it was the first time I ever actually. This isn't the first time I've been on a MAGA space. It was that time I was there with American. Pam was there. You were there
That's what I
too,
wanted to get into.
but you
That's
were
what I wanted you to get
AFK.
into.
I think you were away from the keyboard kind of thing.
So
Right.
let me
Okay.
set it up. Let me set it up, right?
Okay.
Okay, so you helped out these women. You're learning about what happened on January 6th according to them and their experience, and learning about how they feel and past traumas, and how in the world, and you was at J6, how in the world did you come across Pam and end up learning everything that you learned about her, and why does she attack you and me and other people, which blows my mind that she attacks you, because usually her target is just MAGA people, people
Yeah.
that are J6ers, people that support Trump, but she went after you, and you are a liberal. So how did that whole thing come about?
What I've learned through what I do is when you observe people over time, their motivation starts to become clear, right? Which is how I only ended up with two women at the end of the day, based on the pool that I had access to, either people who responded to my messages or people I could find on social media. of all the people I had access to, only two of them felt authentic enough for me to actually learn something from, right? I met Pam. Pam landed on my radar because she was one of those first 100 women. She was an outlier. She was, at the time, the oldest woman. She was an older boomer. She wasn't my demographic.
Right.
Pam got on my radar because I never paid any attention to Pam really because she was just typical. To what I saw with Pam when I looked at her, in my opinion, was somebody who was looking for influence and clout.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, money wasn't the primary source. It didn't seem at the time. I know she raised funds for J6 prior to going to prison. She
More
would
about
continue to do
attention.
it even after she got out, all the way through April of 2023. That was the last Give Send Go she had, was April of 2023.
So she was raising money after she be calling out everybody for
Mhm.
raising money.
Yeah, yes. And interestingly, it wasn't for legal fees because she had public defenders, right? She also speaks frequently on social media about how wealthy her family is, which, she doesn't have the right to anyone else's money, but yes, she does have a very wealthy family member. Um, but that's neither here nor there. The thing with Pam is she's a chameleon, right? It's not about ideology. It's about who's going, for me, again, these are my observations, my opinion. I'm not
Right.
stating it as fact. Based on what I've observed, she's someone who will go where the attention is. And I watched that through the entire year of 23. It got my attention because someone I know who was a liberal was in her spaces back in June of 23. I thought, why are they in there? And so I said, why are you in there? And they told me she's changing. So, oh, all right, I'm going to see what this is like because I've been talking to people for a long time now, and no one said, hey, all of a sudden my entire ideology has changed because you're in my life, right? No one said
Mm-hmm.
that to me, nothing like that. And so I talked to Pam once in DM, and we arranged a half-hour phone call. And I said to her, I told her I've built relationships with women who trust me enough that they call me when their kid commits suicide. And I fly out and drive them to Philadelphia to start their sentence at federal prison because there was nobody who wasn't strung out on meth who could do it,
Right.
right? And like, how did and yet I am not changing anything as far as ideology goes for them. How did you do it, Pam? And so she told me, at the time, it was her brother, her family, her therapist, and AA. And I thanked her, and that was the end of that, right? And then I move on, and it's now July, and CNN platforms her. And unfortunately, legacy media, or mainstream media, as your side calls it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they are lazy. They're lazy. They want an
Did
easy
no
story.
homework on her at
No,
all.
well, they want a feel good story. And then they put one up, and then all the other affiliates all pop it up too. So that, Newsweek and Raw Story and all of them are showing the same thing. And
Uh-huh.
it's, Pam disavowing Trump because she left MAGA. So I started listening to the spaces where it became pretty clear to me she was the same person I saw the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that. Because I had studied her on paper extensively with the first 100 women, looking for
Right.
patterns, right? And she she was so hostile to different communities that liberals don't behave that way with, right? And people were very calm with her and took a lot of time and patience to try to explain to her things, right? And she would just get angry and block you. That eventually happened to me because after I heard one of those things, I wrote a 3-part thread about her,
Mm.
laying out how she didn't leave MAGA. She was shunned from MAGA. She was kicked out of MAGA. And you can see the entire, if you look, I could do a whole storyboard of social media clippings that show you exactly what
Yo, this
happened.
is this is like bizarro world right now. I mean, really, think about it, right? Here I am. I'm a J6er, right? Went to prison, all of that good stuff. Come home, and I start getting attacked, not by a liberal. I
Right.
start getting attacked by a January 6er who is now a self-proclaimed liberal. That she's seen the light and everything about Biden is amazing and Trump is the devil. And then I get defended and accolades from someone that's a liberal, and to the point where you on my show when we talking, we kicking it, laughing, and this is crazy. This is
Well,
pretty
because
cool.
we're talking about issues that we can find commonality in, right? We're
Yeah,
talking about prison reform. We're talking about community. We're talking about people who are bad actors, who are
yeah,
self-serving and exploit their communities,
all day.
right? And Pam, I remember Free State Will in July 22. This is how seared in my brain this stuff is, okay? July of 22, Free State Will was one of the first people to put out a clip of Pam behind the police lines.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't make accusations. He just said, how did this woman get behind this? Not once, but twice, essentially. Odd, that kind of thing. And then she was, that was in July. She went to prison. She was out in September. Now we're rolling into January 2023. And now the Proud Boys trial is going on, right? And she's saying the Proud Boys, the trials going on with the Proud Boys are as fair as a black man in the South in the 50s with an all-white jury. That's what she said. I have the clipping. Also, anything I say, I will always have the receipt. I will never say anything I cannot back up, period.
Okay.
So she says that. So it's very clear she's a Proud Boys fan. She actually says that. I love the Proud Boys. I mean, I have all these clippings. They're deleted now, but the internet's forever. And so I watched all that, but then people start questioning her videos because they're convicting people now, right? Some of this footage is convicting people and it's pissing people off. And Pam's a belligerent person. And, if you confront her, she'll fight you. And then she'll make up lies about you. And that's what happened to me. So I texted her before I put out that 3-part thread, asked her if I could ask her some questions. She blocked me. So I put out the 3-part thread. And I got attacked first time ever, I got attacked online by this entire swarm of liberals.
Wow.
But because again, this is not about Democrats and Republicans. This is not about ideology.
You're making our side look bad because
or I'm disrupting your narrative. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just one side. My side isn't a homogenous group of people.
Facts.
There are some disgusting liberals who are exploiting anything they can right now with the polarization that goes on, just like there are on your side.
100% agree. I talk about them. I feel you.
So, again, you've got to look at people's motivation. How self-serving are you? When there's a mental health professional out there who calls himself a cult expert and then deems every single person in MAGA as part of a cult, right? You'd think that if he's that concerned about his country and making it a country for everyone, and this is a liberal, that he would, when people ask him questions, like, my mom is in this, how can I help her get out? You'd think he'd offer a suggestion. But what does he do? He posts a link to his website and says, buy my book. Well, that's telling me that you're looking for profit over people. And when everything you do is for profit or for likes and clicks so that you're asked to be on CNN or you're asked to do whatever, you're not authentic, right?
Facts.
And that's what I watched with Pam. I watched her get more belligerent with J6 to the point where she was blocked. Whatever the space was they were all doing back in the winter of 23, she was complaining about the general and Helena Gibbs or Gibson, I can't remember, blocking her from their spaces, which pissed her off. She was going to start her own space or something. Right. And then MAGA starts saying she's a Fed or she's Pamtifa.
That's the funniest name I've heard. That's the funniest name I heard on X. When I seen that, I lost it. I had tears in my eyes from laughing so hard. And then seeing her replies, oh my God, that was good.
But Pam's putting herself in a corner right now, because Pam's in 15 minutes is going to be up soon. Because all she wants right now, she's getting attention this week for I won't accept a pardon, right? That's what was, I think, in probably 5 or 6 publications this week.
Wouldn't it be funny if Trump pardoned everybody but her? Like, just because she said it and that made headlines, like all J6 just got a pardon except for Pam Hemphill, who rejected the pardon.
That would probably, if she was offered one, my guess would be she would absolutely take one because she would.
Of course she would.
And she would write, I've gotten no support from important people, and I've had my life threatened. I'm going to take this pardon because I deserve it. That would be the excuse, almost verbatim, I think. Although it would be longer, and it would be a video.
I don't think you're wrong.
Music and dancing.
Yeah, it could be. You might be right.
So and I will tell you why right now the way I'm speaking about Pam isn't empathetic. Right? I'm speaking about Pam very differently than I spoke about Yvonne and Tammy. And that's because I don't like Pam as a person. She does not have a good character. And I know this to be true. I don't have to guess who's lying here with MAGA, who's telling the truth, because I experienced it directly. Pam has a video out. She put it out and she deleted it saying I'm a Russian agent, that I'm a Russian. The grandiosity of narcissism is amazing. She
Whoa, I
said,
didn't hear
yeah,
that one.
she said, because I was trying, here's what Pam doesn't understand. Just because you disavowed Trump does not make you a person I want to associate myself with. Your character sucks. Okay. You lie about people. You're opportunistic. You're exploitive. You're not the kind of person I want in my life. It's
I
as
feel
basic as
that.
that. This is not about a smear campaign. It's about sharing facts because CNN decided to put her out as a poster child of reform, and she's not.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I agree. I agree
Because
with you.
during the election, she was not getting the support she wanted from Democrats. And she'd already ostracized all of J6. So who's she going to support for about 12 hours? I think maybe it was DeSantis.
Oh
Until
wow.
somebody in her close circle who is Black took her aside and explained some of the racism. And then she came back. Oh, but listen to this part. And I have all the clips of this too from social media. I say everything. She says, I was just informed that DeSantis is racist and I can no longer support him. Now, that's a paraphrase, but the exact messaging. And and I'm thinking to myself, but you just went out and declared that you're going to support him because that's who's giving you attention right now. So
Yeah.
DeSantis supporters were having her on their podcasts, and they had big followings. She got a giant following overnight thanks to CNN and has exploited it ever since to spread lies. There's an NBC journalist who's a married man that she put a lie out about, a video, and deleted it, but I have it. And she claims he had an affair with a J6er. And it's just flat out lie because it's a J6er I actually
Wow.
have talked to. And that didn't
Wow.
happen.
That's
The
crazy.
Idaho Press article that came out about Pam, where I was quoted in it,
Hmm.
which is what, after the 3-part thing, that was our first war. The latest war where I got called a Russian agent is because, now think about this, an investigative journalist from her hometown newspaper asked local activists in Boise if they would go on record with quotes. Someone referred her to me as a researcher who knows a lot about Pam. So I got an email from this person, and she said to me, I'd like to ask you some questions. I said, okay. And so she asked me some questions, and then I gave her a link to my Google Drive with something I had prepared for Der Spiegel when they did the same thing last spring, the only 2 publications who've ever put out a real story about her, right? I give them access to my research so that my timeline, if my number 5 thing on the timeline is Pam bought her credentials from Universal Life Church and passed herself off as a
Yeah.
psychotherapist qualified to treat sexual assault victims, you can go look at number 5 in the description and writing, and then also see the exact exhibit number 5, which is a clipping from newspapers.com from the newspaper in Idaho. So there's no
Yeah.
escaping this stuff, right? Um, so that we went to war because I told the truth about her, and it
Yeah.
interfered with her narrative of becoming a grandfluencer, which is a
Yeah.
thing, by the
She's
way.
a she's a grand standard, but
Well, yes,
it's
because the
hey,
story
she
changes.
you know I'm gonna let it be because I
Yeah,
don't
we're
want
not
to
gonna
get
get. You
it.
know what? We're wasting too much oxygen already.
No,
Let's
you're
clear the
good. But
room, man.
look. I want to do a part 2. All right.
Okay.
I try to keep it at
Oh
an
wait,
hour.
can I say one thing about that person
Yeah.
again?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing I want to clear up right now, the thing that made me the most angry, and I haven't done anything about it publicly yet, but except now, is not too long ago. You know how Pam's obsessed with other people raising money
Hmm.
because she can't do that anymore because she's boxed herself out, right? Just like she can't get a pardon, kind of, because she's boxed herself out.
Hmm.
Well, she constantly is posting pictures of people's give, send, goes, right, and disparaging them for raising money, right? And she took a lot of money when she had a public defender. Well, she did that with Yvonne Sincere, who was sentenced to prison in October of 20. She entered prison in 23. She was accepted to the RDAP program, which is a kind of the Cadillac of federal programs. And
Yeah.
if you
Gives you a
completed,
year off.
yes, you get up to
Yeah.
a year off. So Yvonne was supposed to go for 30 months, but she's getting a year shaved off. She's home now. She got home a couple of days ago.
That's what's up. Amen.
But she's starting over because what Pam did is put this give, send, go. What does she need money for? What does she? Well, I'll tell you what she needs money for, Pam. While she was in prison, her loving husband of 22 years, who told her he was her soulmate and who stood by her through all of this and was right there at everything and acted like, they were supposed, it was no accident that they were together, right?
Yeah.
Decided to cheat on her with one of her friends that she had befriended a year before, a woman who was in a bad place that Yvonne was kind enough to assist and help and give her time to, who then did this to her, all within about 4 months of her going into prison. And so here's this woman now who's in a federal prison, whose husband is cheating. And then I don't even know how it happened, but this is when I understood what friend meant, right? Sometime in June, she's in prison, we email, but I hadn't really checked that Facebook page because she was the one that was active on it. Right. It's his. So I went and looked, and all of a sudden the profile picture's changed. And it's him and this woman that I know as her friend. And I'm thinking, oh, they're consoling each other. No, they're not. Cheek to cheek isn't consoling each other. And then I go down and I was like, in a relationship with this person. I'm like, what? So I got a hold of Yvonne's sister, and sure enough, this is what he did to her. And Yvonne's sister told me he's coming to visit her tomorrow to talk things out. And just on a kind of a hunch, the next morning I woke up and I went to the Boise court records, just look. Sure enough, the day before, that afternoon, he filed for divorce. So he wasn't going to work. He wasn't traveling to work.
Going to get that signature. Mm-hmm. So did she lose everything then?
No, so I got a hold of her sister, and as Yvonne would say in her spiritual journey, there are no accidents, and it was part of our soul contract together, because that's how Yvonne thinks. So I use her language in this. Mm-hmm. Because when I called her sister, the sister said the daughter had a phone call with Yvonne in 10 minutes. And so there was like an 11-minute window for all these things to happen so that Yvonne was prepared and not ambushed. So when he called and got off the plane, that he was off the plane and heading to the prison, she said, you walk in here with anything in your hands, I'm not coming out. And so he didn't. And then he promised her he wasn't going to do it. And he did. He mailed it, but he served it improperly, so it didn't count.
Right.
But then he did it again. She's 58 years old in March. Okay? She hasn't worked since 2020. You know how hard it is for a woman our age to get a job?
So you said she's free now?
She's got to give send go, Pam.
She's free right now?
She was just released. I don't know the exact status. I've left it alone right now because I know she's got a big family, and
well, send me the give send go in my X account. I'll share it for her.
Okay, I'm not sure who started. Oh, her sister started it. I will send you a link for it to promote.
Okay, yeah, do that. And then if you could put me in contact with her, I would love to talk to her too.
Her sister is a wonderful woman also, whose role in my family has been a caregiver, and she is the one.
I'd love to talk to both of them, and I want to have you back on for the part 2. I want to have a part 2 to this because I know you had a lot more that you wanted to talk about. So I'll bring you back on for a part 2. I got to get off right now. Yeah. I got to go pick up my daughters. This has been cool. I like this. This is kind of this is what I like because it's showing unity, right? We just had a full-blown conversation. We don't agree on everything.
An hour.
Yeah, an hour long. We don't agree on everything. But like you said, it's the common thing in between us that we can relate on. And that's what I feel.
Josh, you know how to be respectful.
Yeah, and the same is likewise, and that's what I feel everybody needs, man. We all need that. So when you have a conversation with somebody that you may not agree with on a lot of things and you find the thing that you do agree on, talk. And even if you have a conversation about things you disagree on, don't be disrespectful in doing it. And that's the key.
Call each other names. We're not getting anywhere with that stuff.
100%. But Noelle, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to the next one. God bless you, and I will see you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Peace.